We are present as far as we can be, and we'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock, Tuesday, August the 7th, 2018, for our work session, the briefing session. So the first thing on the agenda that we have is to discuss the agenda items.
Mayor and Council, tonight on your consent agenda, item 4A are the minutes from the July 12th joint council meeting, bond committee meeting, and the minutes from the July 17th city council meeting. I would ask the council tonight to table the approval of the minutes. We found some mistakes that we want to fix, and I was not comfortable in bringing that to you right before the meeting, so I would ask that you table that item. Remove that from the consent agenda and table it so that we can bring you that the next time. Item 4B is a resolution approving an interlocal agreement between the COG and the city of Duncanville for solid waste pass-through grant. This is in the amount of $85,000. City Council previously approved applying for that grant, and we've been awarded that grant. This is to hire a contractor to help the best southwest cities of Duncanville, Cedar Hill, and Lancaster in developing a regional disaster debris management plan. And so this now accepting the grant requires us to enter into an interlocal agreement with the college. Item 5A on the items for individual consideration is a resolution approving a special events permit for the Duncanville Lions Club for the Smoke and Blues and Barbecue Festival. This is to be held on October 19th through the 21st in Armstrong Park. And this special events permit then provides for them to possess, distribute, and consume beer and wine at the special event, as well as providing for camping or overnight occupancy within the park. Both waiving those requirements through this special event permit. All of the departments in the city have reviewed that, and everything has been addressed from the staff perspective. Item 5B is a resolution authorizing purchase of microsurfacing pavement treatment services from Viking Construction through the City of Grand Prairie contract. Viking Contracting did our previous microsurfacing contract. We had some additional funds available, so we wanted to do additional microsurfacing this year. And so since it was not part of the original contract, we were asking for this second contract with Viking to continue to do some more microsurfacing here this year while the weather is still good. Item 5C is a resolution authorizing an award of bid for accessibility improvements to Camp Creek Contracting. This is through the competitive bid process. You'll note in the agenda memo that we did remove one segment of the project. Originally, when this was bid, we had $600,000 budgeted for the project. When we brought forward to council some potential projects for the community development block grant, you selected the sidewalk project in Fair Meadows. So what we did was deallocate some of the funding from this project to pay for that CDBG project. And so then when bids came in, we were over what we had left in the budget, so we removed a segment of that project from this bid to get within the budgeted amount. That segment can be done next year when we have the reimbursement from CDBG and we have the funds back in the traffic safety and improvements budget.
Okay. Some housekeeping in terms of the executive session. We'll decide whether we're going to do that as it's shown on the agenda in terms of its placement, whether we do it right after or before we actually, decide whether we will do it prior to or subsequent to the normal discussion of the agenda. So we'll just see how things go with the briefing session. If we can get this done, then we can do the executive session at the outset of the council meeting. If not, then we'll do it at the end of the council meeting. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, moving into item number 2 for our work session briefing. The briefings and presentations, this is the recommendations of the Citizens Bond Advisory Committee, including whether to call for a bond election and potential bond projects if an election is called. So that is the task that we have before us as a council tonight, is not deciding on individual projects, but deciding whether to take the advisement and the recommendations of the commission, committee, to the citizenry for a vote. So open it up for discussion by council.
In short, I'm in favor of it, and I've been in favor of it.
Could you just elaborate so that we get a little more detail on exactly what you're in favor of?
I'm in favor of what's been proposed from the bond
In its entirety?
in its entirety.
So forgive me for
No.
plumbing you.
No.
I just want to
But I mean, my stance has remained the same throughout.
I understand. It's important for us as we discuss this, for us to be as specific as possible for the record, because we are being recorded. This is an archive.
I'd like to strike the Duncanville Road improvement, Cedar Ridge Road improvement in front of the post office, and include the trails and the bridge that connects the two parks over by Harrington and Waterview.
Repeat that, strike Cedar Ridge.
And include the trail system and the bridge that will connect the two parks over there, Waterview and Harrington.
Okay?
If you don't mind, I'll go right behind Leslie, because I echo her sentiments about the trail. So what you were done for her, I'll also accept as well. I know initially we talked about whether we use the 20-year amount or lower the amount, the bond amount. After speaking with several people in our community and meeting with them and talking, I'm now in favor of the complete bond package. So before I stood to say whether we weigh it out, whether it's 20 years or 15 years. But again, listening to the constituents, I propose we also put up a bond for the entire amount with the addition of the trail that she listed just a little bit.
And I'd like to echo that sentiment also. I've had pro and con, and my position is to get it out to the voters. Let them vote. If they're not voting on the complete package, it's cafeteria style. If they want it, they can vote on it. If they don't want it, then they're making that decision.
Okay. Okay.
So I expressed my opinion at the last meeting. I'm in favor of doing it as it's presented. I'm not against the trail system, and I want to ask a question, probably to the city manager. Is there a way that we can boost this up some so we can include the trails, but also include the street improvements?
Yes, sir, there is. So one of the things that we will talk with you more about on Thursday in your budget workshop, but is that within the general fund, as you all know, we proposed a tax rate reduction, but there is still funding available in the general fund. We are over the target 75-day fund reserve, so there is some funding available that will present some various options for the council to look at if you want to use it or keep it the way it is. One option could be to take another penny to the debt service, which would allow you to increase your debt capacity by about $3 million on a 20-year bond with 1 more cent towards debt service. So if that's the question you're asking, you could, essentially you can issue a bigger bond package within the current tax rate.
I would be in favor of doing that, putting the trail system in, like the other two council people are asking for, but keeping the package as it is, as it was presented to us by the bond
Yes,
committee.
but understanding what Mr. Hugman just said, to do the entire package and to include trails without increasing taxes requires some other adjustments within the budgeting and how those monies are gonna be worked and used, you know, so it's entirely acceptable and understandable. It's just that I think everybody needs to really comprehend exactly what Mr. Huckman just said. Does anybody need any explanation of that? Any elaboration, any more detail on what he?
I don't need explanation. I guess I would probably say instead, I would like to look at it again, because I was not of that mindset to, I'm still in the mindset of removing the street. There may be another priority item that we put in place of the street that we talked about. So I don't know if we wait until the end to propose that or look at that.
And that street is hundreds of thousands, it's not millions.
The street is 1.5, I believe. The Cedar Ridge.
It was 2 million.
Is it 2 million?
Oh.
Okay.
So what Mr. Huckman explained, though, is we have the possibility of adding $3 million in terms of our ability to pay without increasing taxes.
That's 3 more million, so it's 18.6 plus the 21, 22, something like
Right. Yeah.
21.6.
Yeah. So a little bit of internal accounting can make that happen without increasing taxes and still increasing the package to include trails and not even taking out Cedar Ridge. Still a possibility.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, is it also true that we have the potential to get some matching funds for the trails as well?
On the trails, yes, we do have potential for applying for grants for trails. So if we were able to get grant funding, that would either allow us to reduce the cost or build more trails.
I'm just gonna add one comment that if we did increase the amount on the tax rate, I would need to go back and talk with Dallas County about that process, because I've basically already given them that breakdown and they've made their calculations, and that could also potentially affect the effective and rollback calculations that have already been done as well. So I would just need to double check with them. I think we could still do it, but I want to make sure.
Okay.
Since we were talking about just putting the money into the debt service fund anyway, the bonds wouldn't be issued. I think that would probably be, shouldn't be an issue. Or should be a problem.
Shouldn't be.
Any other inputs? I've had some discussions with both citizens and individuals on the commission. And the conclusion that I've reached, my personal feeling, is that, first of all, once again, as I said in our last time we got together, I need to commend the efforts of the committee. They were given an incredible amount of work and a very heavy task to do in a very short period of time. And the fact that they were able to accomplish that and do it extremely well is commendable. And the entire committee needs to understand my personal feelings, and I think I speak on behalf of the entire council for the hard work that was put into the document that was prepared and given to us. And in speaking with some citizens and with some folks on the committee itself, in deference to what they've done and in recognition of what they've accomplished, I feel that my personal feeling is that what they have recommended should be done as they have recommended with no deletions. It's important for all the work that they put into it, all their consideration, that we take their recommendations and take it to the citizens, because that's where it lies. Our responsibility is to the committee for the work that they've done, and to the citizens of this community to present to our citizens what the committee has done. because the 19 people on that committee represented, they were chosen by this council, selected by this council, represent the city in a just and a fair manner. And I think it's only just and fair as well that we present the entire, or present the entire package to the entire citizens and let the citizens decide. Now, this interesting piece of information in terms of the possibility to include the trails. I really like the trails, and when I looked at it, I mean, $1.5 million, but it's gonna take a tax increase to do those. I had some pushback, but I couldn't get out of my heart and in my mind that those trails would be a wonderful addition to our city. Because it would be an attraction. People would come from outside the city to the city to enjoy those trails that we have. We have great topography, and I really would like to see those. So it's new information. There's a possibility that if we can include those trails and still not increase the tax rate, we can show that on the ballot somehow. How the ballot is crafted, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there could be a way. Here again, we give it to the citizens because the committee itself has recommended those other two options. I'm only talking the one option now. I'm only talking the trails. I'm not talking the option on Main Street. To me, that's off the table. But in terms of allowing the citizens to see what the committee has recommended for those trails, and now there is a possibility of including those without increasing the taxes, that I'd really like to see those. So that's my feelings about it.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Also, I was talking to our engineer over there, and he was
Great.
you know, there's no connection between Southwest Dallas across 67 to this side of Dallas County, and they're really looking for a means to get from over there to over here. You know, to cross 67, Cedar Hill, DeSoto. There's no pathway, and so I think we would have great support from the county, from COG and COG, to get funding, and that trail could come through Duncanville, and it can be over there by the field house. And already so I was talking to the fire chief and stuff, and they were saying that they have, when they have the tournaments, there are kids everywhere on the service roads, everywhere, and it's just a dangerous situation. So to have that trail right there, so it connects them to the food outlets over there by the LA Fitness, by Subway, that, you know, for them to have that pathway, I think is also beneficial to that area also. And I really think that we can get some matching funds for that.
That's an excellent point. I appreciate that. So, moving forward from this point, what we need is consensus for the city manager and staff to craft the language for our next meeting in terms of what is going to be a motion item in terms of presenting to the citizens on a ballot in November the committee's recommendations for this project and for the bond election itself. Now, we have a little bit of time, I believe, Mr. Hugman, to incorporate this change if you're working with, with finance and accounting, and to bring everything into scope and perspective so that the ballot that is demonstrated in the language to the citizens can be clear in terms of what's possible and available. As Mr. Hugman explained last time, the ballot will not show line items. It will not be itemized as we see it here. There'll be one bucket of money for Parks and Rec. There'll be another bucket of money for Public Works, but the fire station, new construction, and the renovation of the service center will be individual line items. So there'd be, right now, we're looking at 4 pieces on the ballot. With the possibility of adding the trails could also be another line item.
It would probably be included in the Parks and Recreation.
Okay.
improvements.
Okay.
And so what I just handed out to you was Cedar Hill, the minutes from Cedar Hill's meeting where they canvassed their bond election vote last year. And you can see the ballot language that they had on their ballots. So they had a Proposition A, which was for public improvements and for construction, reconstruction of streets and thoroughfares, and it was an amount of 10 million, but it's very broad based on what it was for, but it was geared all towards streets and public improvements. And then they had Proposition B, which was to build a new library facility, again with a maximum amount, but very broad in what that included. That did include acquisition of needed land. And I know that was a question that several of you had on the tour last week about the fire station. If you wanted to include that within this as well, I think we had that capacity as well to include that as part of that proposition. And then as you see, Proposition C was for parks and recreation facilities, but again, not specific. So what we would be looking at is 4 propositions, one for parks and recreation facilities, which would include trails and buildings and infrastructure, one proposition for streets and public improvements, one proposition for construction of a new fire station, and you could include including land acquisition, and then a 4th proposition would be for renovation of the public work of the service center. And then each one would have an amount specified to it, but it would not be broken out by project. That information would be made available to the public as part of the campaign for those who are promoting that, but it's not part of the ballot, so. And we will get the ballot language from our bond council once the council has passed an ordinance. You will have to pass an ordinance or a resolution calling for the election, specifying the types of improvements to be made and the amounts for each, and then a not to exceed term of the bond. It can be reduced from that, but you need to set a not to exceed.
And who's that bond council?
Bob Transfield.
Bob Transfield.
It's Fulbright Jaworski.
And how long has it been on bond council?
Since before I was here.
So like 1929?
Shame on
He's been your
you.
bond.
Oh, I mean 69.
Thank you.
Jaworski's been your bond counsel for at least 20 years. Over.
So, as I understand it then, we will be asking, or we are asking, we can't take a vote on this matter, but we are asking the staff to craft the language for the ballot election to present to our citizens the package that's been recommended by the bond committee. Separate 2 line items as we've discussed that's necessary to be done, and then also bring into play the possibility of the trails with no increase in taxes for that accounting process.
Mayor, are we also including the bridge in Harrington Park when we say trails? That's what I'm including. And that's a separate item.
It's included.
Okay.
It's included, yeah, that's gonna be in the Parks and Rec bucket. Yeah. So the engineering of that would have to come into play if the citizens decide the trails will go as well. Yes.
Hey, Mayor, the reason I asked about the bond council, I would like the opportunity for us to, I've not met the bond council, don't know anything about the organization, but would love to have some feedback if we decide to go that route, to hear from that bond council to know what we're getting. And also open it up in case we need to look for a new bond council, if that's the case too. So just want to leave those doors open.
Well, I
And
think
your
this,
counsel entitled Bob Transfield is probably one of the best bond lawyers I've ever met. But you're certainly, that's a choice that you can make. So.
And he's the lead attorney for the firm for the entire United States.
okay.
Everybody in the industry pretty much calls him Dransfield the bond guru, because he's that.
That's your choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've heard others, and that's why I heard others.
There's
as well,
definitely
so.
others out there.
Yes, McCall Parker's is big, I think, Mr. West is.
Okay, I need to redirect this because we have a time frame.
Right,
Yes.
so the time frame to call the election is between August 8th, which is tomorrow, and August 20th. So what I need is a meeting date that you want to have a special call meeting to consider that ordinance or resolution calling the election. And then we'll have all the proper documents for you at that time. Next Tuesday or Thursday works.
Can't do
I
Thursday.
can't do Tuesday.
I can't do Thursday.
Monday?
What about Monday?
I can't do Monday through Wednesday, I'm out of state. You can do it without me? You got
No, this is a pretty big thing though. We didn't get you here.
I know.
Councilmember Cooks, you said you could not do the 16th.
I'm in the city, out of town.
How about Monday, August 20th? That's the last day we can do it, but that is available. I'm assuming you don't want to do Fridays.
I'm good for the 20th.
What time?
August 20th?
Or even Monday, next Monday, the 13th.
Nope.
Oh, that's right. Monday the 20th, if that works.
Well, the 21st is a meeting.
Yes, ma'am, and that's outside of our
That's outside
window.
of
We were one day too early and one day too late with your regular meetings.
Unfortunately, they don't allow any leeway on that.
State election.
And Richard already asked that question.
State election.
Our meeting
requires
Thursday night would
72
be-
days prior to
Al
election.
requested to get ready for it.
Yeah, we can't post it by now. We're within the post. The weekend.
So Monday, August 20th, quick meeting, that's it, the only item on the agenda.
That'd be the only item on
Okay.
6 p.m.
that works for everybody.
Let's make it. 6 p.m. good, August 20th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard, we're okay doing it on the 20th, right?
I don't believe there's anything, because when I talked to Dransfield today, he said, as long as we do it before the 21st
Okay, yeah, August 8th to August 20th.
and after today.
Yeah.
So sometime before midnight of the 20th.
So is that 6 p.m.?
6 p.m., August 20th. Got it. Okay, thank you very much.
Let me just, Marilyn also mentioned, it doesn't affect us, but it really does a little bit. We are aware that the school system is having a penny swap election. Is it September?
September
September.
8th, I think.
I know everybody knew it, just kind of want to still bring that up as we think about my election as well.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number B, number 2B. Discuss requiring submission of RFPs, RFSs, or RFQs for expenditures of $50,000 in addition to purchasing agreements, buy boards, and cooperative pricing.
This item was placed on the agenda. Councilmember Jamison requested this item for discussion.
Well, and Barry, because you were in purchasing agent position with Avis, you had different ideas, so go ahead.
Well, when I was in procurement and I had a contracting officer, federal contracting officer appointment with the line item approval of $1 million, I got exposed to the entire exact process of what's involved here in municipal contracting. You have the opportunity to do multiple source solicitation. You have the opportunity to do sole source negotiation with appropriate justification to do so. And at the same time, multiple source solicitation, RFPs, RFQs under the federal guidelines. There's also the other option of using a GSA contract, General Services Administration. General Services Administration, GSA contract is akin to what has been, the buy boards that have been developed. that the contracting officer in Washington, the federal system, does a multiple source solicitation, does the RFQ and the RFP for various line items among hundreds and hundreds of vendors. Then one vendor out of that multiple source solicitation is selected to provide that item in the GSA contract through multiple source solicitation. So it feeds from outside in terms of many into one, and that's how an item ends up in the GSA contract. The same process, very close as I understand it, is how the buy board is constructed for the state of Texas. That the contracting officer for a city can go out to multiple sources and then put together a single contract that has been gone through the multiple source solicitation to bring us one particular vendor for a particular line of products. What that does is expedites the procurement process. It locks in a price for a particular duration of time so that the municipalities that want to take advantage of using the buy board don't have to go through the paperwork and the mechanics of issuing a multiple source solicitation, which is a lot of time, there's a lot of productivity, and it just helps speed up the process. And again, the buy board can lock in a price for a particular period of time. So that's my background and experience on using procurement methods for major line items.
Bree or Richard, if you want to kind of explain the different mechanisms we use, including bidding, piggyback contracts, and co-ops and buy boards.
I'll start out and Bree jump in any point in time to add additional information. Typically, we find that when we get a solicitation, or excuse me, when we get a need for a proposal, that if that's available on co-op, typically that's done in such a way on the co-op or on the price agreement that they've been able to open this up to larger volumes and you know, multiple source quotes that have trickled down to one particular vendor as being the one that is chosen to have best value, best quality of product. And so a lot of that legwork has already been done, so it is a faster procurement process, but typically it also yields a better price because now they're able to offer volume discounts typically with these type of arrangements. And to the degree that they're not available, of course we bid out, and sometimes when we bid out things, of course, we end up with better pricing, and sometimes we end up with worse pricing depending on the factors that are going on in the market. And I'll let Bree add whatever she would like to add to that.
I don't really have too much to add. That's both of you pretty much speak the same language. The purchasing is, cooperative purchasing is a form
Would
of
you mind
strategic.
standing up?
Do you want me to stand up?
Yes, please, just so the entire room can hear you well. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. Cooperative purchasing is a form of strategic purchasing, and the reason for cooperative is to increase your buy power. With the city as small as Duncanville, sometimes it's hard, and this is just information that I gathered from the previous purchasing manager, Richard and Kevin. It's just that sometimes it's hard for us to get business here. And maybe if we put something out and it's harder for us to get a good pricing because the size of it. So maybe if we use a cooperative purchase, a cooperative with Cedar Hill or DeSoto, it's increasing. That vendor knows that, okay, I've done this contract with them, however, now I'm getting Duncanville and we're having that interlocal agreement. So I see both sides of the coin. I come from a state actually where we pretty much bid out everything. But we also had a purchasing department of 9. We all had different commodities, and so it's easier to do it, and we did a lot more services as opposed to commodities. So that's really all I have. I've only been here for about 30 days, but we've done a couple of bids for Public Works, and we've done a couple of cooperative agreements, and pricing has been what it should be. So I'm not sure. I'm interested to hear the discussion behind it, though, of the pros and the cons of why. I see both sides of it, working in purchasing, coming from a state that doesn't use a lot of cooperative purchasing, coming to a place that does a lot of it, just because Texas has a lot of availabilities of cooperatives, and so that's a good thing, actually. So,
In your experience, when you look at a particular line item or request coming in from what we need to purchase, and as I said, using your experience and your intuition, deciding whether to multiple source or to bid that out or to use the buy board or co-op.
so just in my personal experience, and I'm only can speak from my personal experience, I'm relatively new here, so I'm still kind of learning how Duncanville processes things, but from my experience, we look at the cooperative and we look to see what the pricing is. And sometimes we look at it and say, let's just see what we can get. Trying to see, you just use different types of trends, different types of marketing tools, pricing, just to kind of see what's out there, test the market a little bit sometimes. For things like widgets and things, the pricing fluctuates so much so that it's not really advantageous for you to use a cooperative purchasing with a price that's been locked in for 2 years, because pricing changes. Marketing trends and looking at different types of items in the market, it just depends really. And then there's some things that we just don't bid because they are a little bit, they're a little bit more politically driven, so we want to stay with local. I've also asked several times if Duncanville has a local preference to try to encourage local businesses, because local businesses do sometimes get overshadowed because of cooperative purchasing.
Absolutely.
They do get overshadowed. For an example, the mowing contract with Parks and Recreations, I believe we had several vendors because it was such a large project, and people can't, sometimes local vendors or smaller businesses can't sustain that over a contracted period. My suggestion to the Parks and Rec, and they had already thought about this, was to create multiple awards to multiple vendors and break up the city of Duncanville. That way, Company A could probably do this area and they'll do it well. Company B could do this area. That way it's allowing other local vendors to come in and say, hey, I can do this piece, but maybe I can't do the whole city. So that'll kind of, but it also is service driven. It depends on what it is. We can't really piece out of Public Works. I mean, that's not something we can really piece out. We can't have one company doing this section and another company. So it also depends on the commodity or service that you're looking at.
That's a strategic decision. The reason I'm kind of smiling is that's illegal in federal.
That's illegal, right?
Huh?
The federal government.
It's illegal in federal. You can't take a, you know, if the need comes in and it's bulked up at whatever the dollar amount is, you can't piece that out. You have to go to the individuals or the companies that are able to comply with the requirements of that particular solicitation, and you have to award it in whole. You can't break it. I mean, for what she just described is perfect. It's wonderful, and it works great for our city. But don't confuse what I'm saying. I'm just taking.
Yeah, and I totally.
In federal, you
Statute
can't slice and dice a
statutory
contract.
provision that allows us to do that in
Right.
order to enhance local preference.
Yeah.
And it's specifically called out in the bid statute.
And that's what I was going to mention as well. We have 1,741 small businesses in Duncanville. We have 127 certified businesses in Duncanville. And so, but I'm not sure which one of those businesses will meet what we're looking for when we talk about bidding out services. So I would want to know from the buy board standpoint is what services is the buy board, what are we buying from the buy board? what services are they using on a regular basis? I had a question I had to get to you, but left it in the car, but it was more so about the buy board providing us with, who they're awarding these bids to. If it's, when we talk about economic development, and that's kind of where I'm piecing this coming from. When we talk about economic development, we talk about reinvesting in our own city. It starts with us as an employer as well, making sure that we also award projects to our local businesses to put money back in our own city. Because we're gonna ask our constituents, we're gonna ask our citizens to buy in Duncanville. We got to lead by example from a city standpoint as well. So I have more questions on the buy board, but I'll have to probably get back with you on it. But I do want to see from the buy board standpoint where we spending our money.
Do you have a comment, Greg?
Well, I just wanted to share a few things. You know, again, I'm a ex-federal guy. I was a program manager, not a contractor. So, but and again, I carry that over here. The things that, as from Public Works perspective, again, just some things to note. The things that I look at when we consider procurement strategy and we discuss it with procurement manager, we're looking at agility, commodities. A lot of the stuff that we get from the buy board, microsurfacing, crack sealing, milling, those are almost like commodities. And the good thing about that, and this is something I saw in the military, is you don't want to set, when you do the buy board, what you don't want to set is the cities bidding against each other for work. And so I saw a lot of that, again, in the military, where we were looking for aggregate or different things, and I'm looking for this thing, and you're looking for this thing, and next thing you know, we're competing amongst each other for the same resources. And so I think that's very helpful to think about, especially with commodities when you're doing microsurfacing, and there's a lot of these other things. What you're getting is unit pricing, and then you're adapting the unit price to the takeoffs that we do in-house and with the contractors. And that's really the big thing. If it's really specialized, you know, we do go to contract. If we, you know, again, we can't find something that it already exists where it's already been bid, and the other part, again, I think would be helpful. Tonight you're going to be looking at two contracts, one for the extension of the or an additional microsurfacing contract, and one for sidewalks. And just a thing to think about comparison-wise, the Viking microsurfacing contract was achieved through one of the different cooperative agreements by the board, but it was one where it was a Grand Prairie contract. We're piggybacking off it, but that price is set. Very agile. We set the streets. We do our own math, and then we bring in the contractor, make sure that we're comparing notes. Price is set. Come to you guys for a PO. Very quick, very easy process to do. The sidewalk project took a long time to generate. Now, I don't want to take away the scoping, because we're always doing scoping, but the big pieces that affected that was, you know, we had to create a bid book, laying out exactly what we need to do with all the specs and incorporating everything into that process. It goes to the procurement manager. She's got to do her own stuff. We have to staff it through the attorneys for them to review the contracts. It has to go on public purchase for usually at least 3 weeks. We have to then conduct a pre-bid meeting. We have to then do all the bid opening, source selection. That process takes weeks versus days. And so again, it gives us some agility. In that case, we needed the weeks because it was specialized work. But again, it sort of lays out what we're doing. And again, is we only, you know, what I try to do internally to my organization is I realize that we only have one procurement manager. And so when I can release my superintendents to shop bid books, or like with the cars and the equipment services stuff, and then provide, you know, do a lot of the market research, that helps the procurement manager as well, and helps her sort of multiply her time. So again, those are just some of the thoughts. And again, with those larger contracts, we are competing big picture for bigger vendors. Now we do, I know in our language, we always try to shop local, but on the construction side, especially at the scale that we deal with, that's not really as practical. And again, I know there's other different other directorates that can probably speak to buying local.
Well, I noticed too for the contract that was put out for multiple source solicitation, it's a high dollar amount. I think it was about $330,000. That was big dollars, and I was actually glad to see that a multiple source solicitation was done for that.
And that we had all the bids and they were shown.
Yeah, yeah. So I was very pleased, for that particular piece of work that was done, and so it's understanding that I think understand what Bree is saying to us, and that there's going to be times we need to trust her professional judgment in looking at whether it's a commodity or whether it's spec, and how that's done. And each one of those probably, I think, might be a little more work for Bree, but when these come to us, the background material, I would like to see, maybe we'd all like to see the language that says, why did you choose to do a multiple source solicitation, or why did you choose to do a co-op or versus a buy board? And that gives us the language to say, these are the processes, the thinking processes that you went through to arrive at your eventual decision on how you made that procurement come to fruition. Can you do that for us? Would that be agreeable, Councilmember Jameson, if there would be a full explanation that it wasn't just, oh yeah, this is this, I'm going to go buy board?
Thank you. And just to clarify, those are questions that I will ask, just to make sure that we are getting the best pricing, because that is the ultimate goal of purchasing, is to get the best pricing. And sometimes the best pricing is bidding it out, and sometimes the best pricing is utilizing a co-op and with the buy boards and things like that. But I will do some research to see how buy board, what their bid process is, and if they include local businesses. I know that whenever we go out for 3 bids, we always like to see that you've at least checked with at least a few HUB vendors, just to make sure that we're utilizing, we're reaching out and we're giving them opportunities. And then I like to see, and I just don't want to see you write, I looked up, I want to know what those are so we can compare them to what's out there on the Texas Ethics Commission, just to make sure that they're, that they're utilizing that, and we have a list that is easily accessible for me to give anyone. So, I mean, I understand the trying to stay local and trying to keep our Duncanville dollars in Duncanville. That's important. But as from a purchasing standpoint, we're trying to get the best value for maximize our dollars to the best, and make sure that we're being good stewards of the city of Duncanville dollars, and we're making sure we're getting the best price. And sometimes, unfortunately, we can't use local because local is going to be more expensive, and we're going to have more time delays, and just the ability to be able to get it done in a timely manner sometimes falls into local. But definitely, I'll do some research on buy board and see what their procurement process is and things of that nature.
You made an astute observation as well that I heard, that you look at when that particular buy board or co-op was awarded.
Yes.
And if it was a year, 2 years ago, it's like, no, that price is probably going to be somewhat different than it is now. It could go either way.
Exactly.
I mean, like lumber, metal, so on and so forth, that price from that buy board 2 years ago is probably going to be 30 to 40% less than lumber is today.
Yeah.
So it can go either way, but I think I really appreciate you're making that point about knowing when something was awarded and bringing that into the logic process to say, yeah, this may be to our advantage or to our detriment, depending on when that was made. So, thank you. Okay.
And I'll still have more questions, and so Kevin, if you would, I'll forward those questions to you to get back to her to get some answers for.
Okay. Okay, if there's no more discussion on that, where are we at? Big glare on that clock. 6, okay. Item number 2C, a presentation regarding status of the vacant building program.
Mayor, members of council, I want to just provide you quickly a status report of the vacant building ordinance. As a recap, you recall last year we had a briefing session to discuss the issue with some vacant properties and why they were vacant, what we could do, what strategies we could implement to get those, at least taken care of from the standpoint of care, standards of care, or get a business in that vacant building. So this is kind of the timeline of the discussion and the briefing that we finally got to the point of having it adopted in November of last year and beginning enforcement January 1st. So this will be a briefing of the status of that direction that we got from council. Again, just to recap, it regulates commercial industrial vacant structures. Churches and ancillary buildings, only if they're in commercially zoned districts, would be also applicable to the enforcement, along with vacant shopping centers over 50%. It does not include single-family, multifamily. As you're aware, we're moving forward with a single-family registration ordinance and hope to have that before council for adoption in the near future. We also, so how do we determine the vacancies? Through observations, city inspections, utility building disconnects. We can see those requests come through, any reports that we get from the public. And a lot of what we've captured have been through observations, city inspections. Again, the registration process, we want contact information that's critical. So if there's issues of standards of care or problems of multiple break-ins or whatever, we have that information that we can contact the owner or the property manager. Proof of liability insurance has to also be submitted, along with at least some kind of minimal marketing requirements, having a sign up, having it listed online. One of the really key features that we included here that council was aware of was the trespass warrant. So that they have to then submit a criminal trespass warrant for their vacant building. So if someone is on the premises without permission, the police department will have that vacant or that trespass warrant in their system so they can pull that up and possibly at their discretion make that arrest. Submission of a floor plan for first responders, again, seeing what that looks like. So if there is a fire or any kind of emergency at that building, we know what that looks like. Again, those get passed on to the police department and the fire department. They're also required to give us a change of ownership. So if there is a change of any kind of information ownership and or also the property manager, we have to be aware of that. Standards of care and maintenance, obviously, those were increased, and I'll show those in a minute. They do have to submit a registration fee of $750, a re-inspection fee, 1 cent per square foot. If they do not register, it is a Class C misdemeanor, now with a maximum fine of we've had to issue some citations, so I'll kind of talk about those. Again, just, sir.
Mr. Frederickson, I'm just wondering, can you touch on the ones that have been changed or modified as a result of council input instead of going through every single bullet?
The very first 4 bullets were already, so secure, maintain, weather protection, vegetation. I'm sorry, I'm going to pointer here. So the secure and maintain was already in the ordinance, weather protection, vegetation, landscaping, parking, driving services, exterior walls. So the remaining items, protective treatment, premises identification, structural maintenance, and the rest of the items, roof damage, decorative features, deck, stairways, chimneys, handrails, those were added as a result of council input last year. So we recall, the ordinance, I think council at the time felt that the previous ordinance was very deficient as far as standards of care. We didn't really have a lot of teeth in that, so we did add those additional items in there for standards of care. We did, again, try not to be too draconian with the ordinance. We did have fee waivers in there, so they would be allowed to get a waiver of the $750 fee. It's valid for 12 months, so every year they would have to come back and ask for another fee waiver. There were only 4 categories. If there was a catastrophe, fire, flood, if there was the property was deceased and there was or no longer competent. If they've obtained a building permit and were progressing in an expedient manner to fix the vacant building for occupancy. And then, of course, if they've maintained, it was a structure that's been currently maintained and taken care of, they could require or ask for a fee waiver. When we do get those requests in, code enforcement looks at that. If they have a history or they have current violations, they are typically not going to be granted that fee waiver. So once council did adopt this, one of the things we first thing we did was send over 1,000 letters to all the commercial property owners detailing the new ordinance and saying that if you met these conditions, you would have to register. Then to date, from the beginning of the enforcement to now, we identified 27 properties. So we still maintain them on the list, but they'll be kind of decommissioned off the list if they've obtained a CO or if they're registered or what have you. So we still have 7 properties that are still currently not registered with the city. We have then 13 that are registered with the city. 8 of those got waivers and 5 of them did not get waivers, which meant they have to pay the $750 fee. And then we have some that came off the list because now they have current COs. And so that's again part of what you wanted to see in the ordinance, something to encourage them to get that vacant building occupied, and it has most certainly proved that. You'll get a copy of this slide, but the main issue to show is that, again, we had the 27 properties total that are on the list. You know, the numbers that have got the COs, those that were granted waivers, and then the 7 that are not registered. I do want to point out, because when we did send 1,000 letters out, and we really had a very slow response when we initiated this. Nobody registered at the beginning, January 1, which was not a surprise. So we had to go shake the tree and see if we could find some, and because we knew they were out there. So we sent 27 notices of violation. That also included the full application packet. So we sent that packet with the notice of violation. And then we got some in. Then we had some others that we still were not coming forward. So we've had to write citations. I just mentioned that because you know, that's an important aspect that we. Now that we've got the citations and people are aware of it, we've really started seeing an uptick in our compliance. Again, the citation is a last resort. We've had a number of properties that have been really not very cooperative, maybe is probably the right word, because this is a very unique ordinance. Yes, ma'am.
We got 3 minutes.
Sorry. Okay. This is a very unique ordinance, really kind of a thing that you don't really see throughout the Metroplex, and I know I've received a couple of calls from other cities wanting copies of our ordinance, asking about its effectiveness and so forth. And again, through the direction of council, I think we were able to tighten it up, and really I think it's now beginning to really work well, and everybody knows it's there. Again, this was a picture of the building before. After, it's now got a paying business in there. It's the
Pure Heavenly Essence.
Pure Heavenly, yeah, thank you.
Little bike shop.
Little bike shop. So this is the old Callaway's. They are registered. They are also in the process of redoing the shopping center. I believe they may be coming forward with a zoning application for a event center in the immediate future. I think, Council, you recall this church. This is, you know, we had the issue about the ancillary buildings, and now it's gone. That was one of probably the first successes that we had in the ordinance, that the church volunteered to have the property or the structure demolished. This is the old Duncanville florist. This was an extremely delicate case, and that we had to really work, but we got successful, and here's the after photo. It doesn't do justice because there's a lot of debris and trash behind the property that's also been cleaned up, and they've cleaned the underbrush and so forth, so we're happy about that. This is Shameyville. Just so you know, we are progressing forward. We had an environmental assessment performed Monday, which is going to help us with our scope, so that we can put the scope together and take it out to bid, deliver it to Bree, so she can go find some bidders to help us knock it down. We are still trying as quick and diligently as possible to have something done before the end of this physical year.
Duncanville football team community service with sledgehammer.
So, you know, I might mention the environmental survey will be looking at possible asbestos, but also over here is the lube area, and we know that we do have some water with some oil, standing oil, so I mean there's going to be some environmental issues that will up the cost of the overall demolition, but the plan is to take it all the way down, remove concrete and so forth, and bring it to green state. Just to show a few other buildings, this one we've abated. It's a it was an old dentist, it's a vacant structure. It's actually in decent shape, but we've had to just monitor this property. This is the old Papa Murphy's. I think we had a question on a tour. You know, they did a lot of concrete work, and that a lot of it was a result of they had to go in and fix the grease trap and do that work. They've also poured new concrete, so we're hoping, again, as soon as that went vacant, staff was on it, got with the owner to tell them that it was required to be registered as a vacant building. But those are just a couple examples. I'll be more than happy to take any input, but you know, I think hats off to council for their direction and putting this together. You know, again, it got to a slow start from a staff perspective, but finally I think it's caught on and people are complying. Thank you.
I'll save it from time. Is this ordinance already in place right now?
Yes,
It's
sir.
already up and going?
We took an existing, we did have an existing vacant building ordinance, taken to council, and rightfully so. I think there are a lot of efficiencies with that previous ordinance, and so that we added a lot of standards of care, some other requirements, and so that it was basically repealed and we added this new vacant building ordinance. A lot of it was based on an ordinance that San Antonio had, that they had a vacant building ordinance, so we made some modifications, but this is citywide, so.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll close our working group session at 7:02 on the August 7th, 2018. The first thing that we will have is invocation by Pastor Sammy Berry from the Dallas West Church of Christ. Pastor, you rise, please.
Thank you, and as we begin tonight, I want to also make mention that I am a 37-year resident here in the city of Duncanville as well. Let us pray together. Father in heaven, we come to thee at this time with bowed heads and humbled hearts. Father, we come asking tonight your very special blessing upon this meeting. We're so thankful for all of our city leaders. We're thankful for the mayor and the council. Father, we are thankful for all of the administrators. Bless the meeting tonight. Bless all of the presentations, all the decisions that have to be made. And Father, we pray also for the citizens of this great city. We're just so thankful tonight to be able to be here, and we pray this prayer in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. You all join me with our pledges to our flags, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor our Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated. The next item on the agenda are reports. First item at 1A is the mayor's report. I would like to give a short report. The city of Duncanville recently earned a bronze level certification through the Scenic City Certification Program. This is a program from Scenic Texas and its 15 partner organizations, and it's the first time that the city of Duncanville has received this certification. So y'all and the entire citizenry should be very, very proud of this. It shows that it recognizes cities for demonstrated commitment to high-quality scenic standards, public roadways, and public spaces according to our websites and what our specifications are for our city. So being publicly recognized is a special reception at the TML, Texas Municipal League Annual Conference in Fort Worth on October 11th. The city of Duncanville will receive special recognition for that. So it's a great honor, and we thank all the people and all the citizens and all the staff that helped us to achieve this level of certification. Thank you. Moving on to item 1B, are there any council members' reports?
Yes, Mayor, I have one this evening. I wanted to recognize the students. I had an opportunity to go and judge a STEM contest for the middle school of Duncanville, and there was 10 students there who came up with apps, and they had a number of apps that they had to create for the summer. It was over 100 students. 10 of those students was the finalists, and one of the winning students was it's called the Scoop for the dog, and so they was going to put an app on an animal, and anytime your animal made a poop in someone's yard, it would notify you where the poop was located. And so this was a group of 6th graders, and they had a whole list of things that they came up with. The app was. I was really excited to be a part of the judge contest, but that one I had to vote for that one to win. I'm like, okay then. All right, so congratulations to those students that I had a chance to visit with. The second thing is I also have a friend that I've met over the years who's with the Frisco Rough Riders, and he said to me, Mark, we're excited about Duncanville. We're excited about you being on the council for Duncanville. So I wanted to invite you out to throw the first pitch of one of our baseball games here on August the 28th. And I said, you know, I couldn't do that without our great city. So I'm going to open up, and I'll talk to the mayor, and I'll open up and invite the entire city of Duncanville to make it a Duncanville night at the Frisco Rough Riders game. I'll have some information printed. You'll be able to email me if you'd like to attend. I know that's a good drive to Frisco, but it is a $20 or a $25 price on it. But you also get food. You get a good seat in the shade. He made sure he would give us some shade seats. And also, he would also give us food and drinks, water and anything else you want to drink for a certain period of time. So if you'd like to participate in that, please email me at mcooks@duncanville.com, and we'd love for Elise to take our city. That'll be Duncanville night. And so I didn't want to stop there because I didn't want to make it about me at all. So I asked if I could invite one important guest with us to do that to throw out the pitch, and he said yes. So Mayor, I want to know if you would accompany me and go out and help throw out that first pitch at the Frisco Rough Riders.
On one condition, that you practice, so you make it all the way to the plate and don't throw it in the dirt.
I will practice if you will be there, but they may have both of us throwing out the pitch, and we'll see which one will make it to the plate. So please look for that information that I want us to be excited to, if anyone would like to travel with us to go there, that would be great. The last one I do have is that I'm going to be eating at Luby's restaurant at least once a month, and I'm going to ask any citizen that would like to join me at Luby's and have lunch. You're buying your lunch, and I'm buying my lunch, but we get to have some good conversation at the same time. So Luby's restaurant at the end of this month at 11:30. Again, email me if that's something you would like to join on, and we'll just make it a regular lunch, laugh, and eat event once a month at Luby's. We'll start at Luby's, but we'll work around our city, the city of Duncanville. Then last but not least, I want to offer my condolence to one of the constituents in District 4, the Frank and Rose Jackson, who lost their son. They've been my neighbors for the last 12 years, and so I offer my condolence to them today, and we'll be with them Saturday night at the Hilton Garden Inn as they have a celebration of their son, life or death to heaven from here. Other than that, I will be traveling next week to the Texas Municipal League for new council training, and I look forward to doing that on the 16th and 17th and bring it back to the citizens of Duncanville what I've gained from that conference for the 16th and 17th. So that's my report.
Thank you. Seeing as there are no other council members' reports, moving on to city manager's report, Mr. Hugman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to note that as per the city charter, staff filed a proposed budget for FY 2019 on July 31st, and we will be having a budget workshop with the City Council this Thursday, August 9th at 5:45, starting at 5:45 p.m. To go over the proposed budget with the council in detail. The first public hearing for the public will be at the City Council meeting on August 21st, and the second public hearing on September 4th. I would also like to make a special note for our finance department for the hard work that they put into crafting the budget, finalizing it, printing the budget books, and running all of the budget summaries. It's a tremendous amount of work any time we do this, but especially this year, the finance department as well as IT have been involved in implementing a new enterprise software system. So they have been working very many hours and very diligently working on that project, which has taken them out of the office sometimes 2-3 days a week for full day training and implementation. But they work very hard to get the budget done as well and prepare for the workshops and the public hearings. So I just really want to express my appreciation to them for their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hugman. Moving on to item number 2 on our agenda, proclamations and presentations. The first one is a proclamation in recognition of the Daughters of the American Revolution, the Old Chisholm Trail chapter. And I'm going to be making that presentation. And Joanne Holt-Cossey.
Okay.
You had a great picture on the cover, too.
Oh, that magazine, yes. My partner in crime is back there too.
Hi, Bobby. Yeah, we have this proclamation. You can have the original, and I'll be reading from here. Whereas the Old Chisholm Trail chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution was chartered 21 years ago in the home of Mrs. M.M. Harrington. And whereas charter officers of the chapter included organizing Regent Twyla Belgaunt, Maddie Ray Fouts, Vice Regent, Blanche Jackson, Recording Secretary, Eula Iris Armstrong, Corresponding Secretary, Helen Lee Heron, Treasurer, Joan Beth Bickerstaff, Registrar, Marcia Tyler, Historian, Peggy Farmer, Librarian, and Beulah Freeman, Chaplain. And whereas the Old Chisholm Trail chapter began with 82 charter members, and whereas these charter members, through active involvement with the chapter, have contributed to many worthwhile projects that have helped make Duncanville the city of champions, and whereas the Old Chisholm Trail chapter remains important for future generations, as many families who first founded Duncanville are from revolutionary ancestors, and whereas the Old Chisholm Trail chapter has prospered from the leadership provided by many outstanding and faithful members throughout its history. Now therefore, I, Barry L. Gordon, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby proclaim August 7th, 2018 as Daughters of the American Revolution Old Chisholm Trail Chapter Day in the City of Duncanville, and urge all citizens to join me in celebrating the many contributions the Old Chisholm Trail Chapter has made to the DAR and the City of Duncanville. In witness hereof, I set my hand and cause the seal of the city to be affixed the 7th day of August, 2018. Congratulations to the chapter and to all of you that participated.
I will let you know that there is a little typo there because we're 41 years old, not 21. But, yeah. And we also have a certificate for you. That's probably our fault. It's probably our new tuition week. This is a certificate signed by the President General of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, thanking you for going above and beyond to recognize the Constitution. We want everybody in this land to remember what that Constitution means for all of us. It helps us keep America free.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate this. It means a great deal.
We appreciate you all.
In fact, after the magazine appeared with you and Bobby on the front cover, and my wife and I were reading it at home, my wife recalled she has an ancestor. She believes that she can actually track it, and so she's gonna plan on getting in touch with y'all to see what she can do about that.
Absolutely, let's welcome her.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bless you, thank you. Oh, our next presentation is going to be by Councilmember John Ann Jameson, the councilmember from District 5, and she has a presentation for Keep Duncan Beautiful.
This is for John and Phyllis Lambert, Golden Things. Whereas the City of Duncanville is committed to improving the physical quality of community life, and whereas the Keep Duncanville Beautiful Board was established to promote this commitment, and whereas the mission of the Keep Duncanville Beautiful Board is to empower Duncanville citizens and businesses to take responsibility for enhancing their community, environment, and whereas each quarter the Keep Duncanville Beautiful Board recognizes one commercial property within the city for significant improvements to the exterior portion of the property, landscape improvements, and/or long-term maintenance of the property that exemplifies high-quality standards, and whereas the Golden Things located at 215 East Camp Wisdom Road has been selected as the Business Beautification Award recipient for August 2018. Now, therefore, Barry L. Gordon, the mayor of the city of Duncanville, do hereby urge all residents to join me in congratulating the Golden Things located at 215 East Camp Wisdom Road and commending this business for contributing to the beautification of our city. And along with their beautification, I know they're involved in a lot of civic things and donating jewelry, and we love your coupons for the batteries. And
I definitely need that.
here.
Thank you very much, and my Duncanville is the best thing there is, so I greatly appreciate it. Makes everything wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, it's wonderful to recognize our citizens and our businesses for what they contribute to our great city. Moving on in our agenda, we go to item number 3, citizens input. And at this time, there are 2-minute comments will be taken from the audience on any topic. Please submit. We have one request here that's submitted. And in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, the council cannot discuss issues or make any decisions at this time, but issues may be referred to city staff for research and possible future action. I have one card here, Mr. Grady Smithy. I believe I mentioned you have 2 minutes.
You know, I can see that thing pretty well.
Well, we're watching it with you.
Grady Smithy, 1806 Cedar Hill Road, Duncanville resident since 1950. I want to come and thank the council tonight for its positive consideration, you know, in the briefing session of the recommendations made by the bond committee. You all put together a really good bond committee. That was the most diverse committee I've ever served on in Duncanville, and believe me, I've served on a lot of committees in Duncanville over the years. And the group really worked very hard to try to do what you asked us to do, which is to stay within that, what is it, $18,640,890 that would require no tax increase and no tax rate increase, but would give us some things that need to be updated in the cities. Cities are like people; they get old. They wear, you know, facilities wear down. You know, we built so many of the things in our only large park, Harrington Park, in the late 70s and early 80s, and those things have, most of them aged, and most of them are ready to be replaced. And so I do appreciate the fact that y'all gave positive consideration to that. And I really appreciate the fact that you really put together a very, very good committee, and I was honored that they elected me chair. And I would ask your permission, if you will, to let the members of that committee that are in the audience please stand up and be recognized.
Please do so. Please stand. Thank you very much, everyone, for all your hard work. Moving on to item number 4, the consent agenda. The interim acting city secretary will read the consent agenda. Excuse me. Item number 4A has been tabled. We will not include that in the consent agenda tonight.
Item 4B, consider a resolution approving the interlocal agreement between North Central Texas Council of Governments and the City of Duncanville, subrecipient for the grant award of the Solid Waste Pass-Through Grant Program in the amount of $85,000 from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality through the North Central Texas Council of Governments.
Chair will entertain a motion to
Move to approve.
Motion is approved. Motion is second. All in, please vote. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, items for individual consideration. Item 5A, consider a resolution approving a special events permit to the Duncanville Lions Club for use of Armstrong Park as provided in Exhibit A, providing for the possession, distribution, and consumption of beer and wine at such special event in accordance with Section 12.205 of the Code of Ordinances, providing for camping or overnight occupancy within said park, providing for regulations and conditions for such use, providing for a waiver of applicable distance requirements under Section 12-201 of the Code of Ordinances.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council, City Manager. It's my pleasure to present this item to you all this evening for your consideration and approval. Tonight we're proud to present, and I love doing special events here. So the Lions Club has submitted their special event application through the process on July 5th for the 2018 Smoking Blues and Barbecue Fest. Included in the application is the request to sell and consume alcohol, specifically beer and wine only, on city property at the park there. Also included is the right to camp, a request for that to be done overnight in the park, and a distance waiver for the alcohol sales. All primary logistical planning for the event has already been underway for a while now, and it does mirror the 2016 and 2017 events with a couple of unique parts to it, and specifically we will be utilizing the Library and Recreation Center parking lots for the cookers, and also the Recreation Center will be utilized by KCBS for judging, because they have to have a very strict code of how there's no access, etc. So during that time on Friday and Saturday, the Recreation Center and Library will be closed, but it will not go for lack of productivity, because actually the staff of both the library and the rec center will be undergoing training as well. So we will take advantage of that opportunity where they will focus on doing things for the community. So the Lions Club continues to meet with staff from key departments. We've already had, I believe, a couple of meetings, and we anticipate as we get closer to the event to have a couple of more, to include police, fire, public works, and of course parks. The event details: it is going to be held October 19th through the 20th at Armstrong Park. It will be open on Friday from 4 to 10 and from Saturday 10 to 10. The event permit hours that they are requesting is from Friday at noon to Sunday at 10 a.m. And this will allow the setup for the event in the day on Friday before they open at 4, and then it will also allow for them to spend the night on Saturday night because the event closes at 10 p.m. and be able to then vacate the premises by 10 a.m. on Sunday. And the primary activities will be the barbecue contest, that is a KCBS endorsed event with multiple categories. There will be live music on the stage at the amphitheater as well, and so we are at this time requesting the approval from the City Council for the sale and consumption of the alcohol on the city property, and that is beer and wine only. To follow TABC requirements, they must utilize a TABC licensed vendor to sell the alcohol, and that has been secured through Roma's Italian Bistro. The entire public area for the event will be fenced in. There will be a little bit of a change in the footprint to include the library and recreation center as well in the fenced area. The recreation center, as I alluded to, would be utilized for judging, and there will be 3 uniformed Duncanville police officers on site during the event and 1 in the evening. There will be 2 in the premises and then 1 on Main Street helping people to cross from the west side of the road to the east side to be able to get into the event. The fire department will be on call if necessary, and CERT will be present at the senior center in case of minor emergency care and if there were any weather concerns. We'll not put that out there even. They will be utilizing a sound system and video board to alert the public if there was any kind of emergency. And so that is already established protocol. The evacuation sites are identified like we do for most of our special events at Armstrong Park are the Recreation Center, the Senior Center, and here at City Hall. The south side of James Collins will be absolutely, completely shut down. The north side will be made a 2-way access. The south side of the road may be utilized for vendors and RVs or cookers that would be depending on how big the event is. And portalets will be actually provided also by the Lions Club. And here's an event map. And just so I get to use this. The new fence line, it did stop right here at James Collins. It's now going across to the library and up and around the backside, and actually, well, it's not going around the back of the library, but right there is where it connects to the library. So that will make this entire area secure. The area by Kidsville will actually be outside of the fenced area. So this area of the park will still be open to the general public. Tonight, we have Mr. Joe Kyle here from the Lions Club. If y'all have any specific questions maybe for him as you all consider this.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to approve. We have a motion to approve.
I have a question before.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. One of the things that when we got the proposal for this was that this event was designed to put heads in beds, as Jessica James said. If we're who's going to be camping if we're putting heads in beds in the hotels?
The folks that are participating in the barbecue, the cookers, they start Friday afternoon. They spend the night on the premises, and they start turning in their, at 11 o'clock the next morning, there's about a 4-hour period where they turn in to be judged. So they never leave the campsites. They have burning fires.
I understand, and that's they've done that every year, but the other years, there was not necessary for people to be camping.
That's the only ones, well, they've always been there. They've always been
So
camping.
this is specifically just
For them. The only other people that'd be on the grounds are our police officers that I'm aware of, and maybe a few of us that are still trying to clean up. But we're not planning on spending the night. So this is more for the barbecue folks.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing as there's no further discussion, please vote. I did not see Councilmember Jameson's vote show up. There it is, okay. The motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 5B. Consider a resolution authorizing purchase number 18-104, microsurfacing pavement treatment services from Viking Construction Incorporated through the City of Grand Prairie contract number 17041 with an estimated expenditure amount of $177,903.40.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, what I do want to call to your attention for this briefing and your next briefing was the large 11 by 17 maps that were placed at your places over in the briefing room. The map that we'll see is very small, and so I just want to provide that for you as a reference. Again, the applicable guidance for the microsurfacing project that you see here is, again, high-quality neighborhood, best practice organization, and then it's just a part of our work plan items for street maintenance. Again, our staff request is that you approve this contract tonight for the microsurfacing contract, not to exceed the amount shown. Again, just some background. I was up here several months ago for the first $400,000 or almost $500,000 microsurfacing contract, and we have some additional funds available in the street maintenance budget that was allocated to us, and we're using that to go out and get some more roads done. And again, you'll see on the map, we'll point out where we're at. Again, just for background, I know since the last time we've had some new council, but again, microsurfacing is just basically a very thin layer of an emulsion with some aggregate that we apply over the existing road, and the intent there is to just create an impermeable barrier and just extend the life of our roads. As I've mentioned before, sort of the life cycle of an asphalt road. We pave it. Initially, we just do some crack sealing, and after that process, the next step is then we'll crack seal it and then apply a microsurface. And then after that no longer works, we go to the mill and overlay, which is the 20-year process, and which is a contract, again, that we're actually executing right now. Again, just the locations, again, I refer to your maps. I just wanted to show, again, this is an example of one of the roads that we will be microsurfacing. We've already been out and did the crack sealing last week. So this is ready for the next step, which is the microsurface. And again, I'm sure you've seen it around in the neighborhoods already where the product has come in, and I think that the citizens have been very pleased with the product. This product was through the buy board, or a Grand Prairie piggyback contract is what we're using, and so the same contractor, Viking, would be coming back again, subject to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ramey. The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve and seconded. Is there any discussion, please?
Just a quick question, and this may be for Tim, I don't know. Most of these streets aren't going to require any striping after you overlay them, but in the park road and everything, when we took our tour last week, the striping in Harrington Park is terrible. Do you have a striping contractor lined up?
Yes, sir. So we do have a striping contractor specifically actually to come look at both parks. Armstrong Park, which is actually getting ready to get a mill and overlay job as part of this current contract. And then the Harrington Park with a microsurfacing. And then yes, we were bringing in a contractor to do the striping for both those locations.
Okay.
That begs another question. Lakeside Park also needs to be striped. It's not on the overlay, but.
I would have to take that comment and add it to our street superintendent and have a look at it, sir.
Okay, Councilmember Jameson.
Did you get the opportunity to see on Lady Lane, is that an overlay?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's what they look like?
Yes. It's very almost indistinguishable from, especially in the outset, from a mill and overlay. And I've had a few folks come in and go, well, my road is very poor. I saw you got this road done. And I've had to have several conversations. Well, I'm sorry, but your road is beyond microsurface, but not to worry. We'll be coming back and do a mill and overlay, which is actually the more the longest term solution. So.
And who decides that? I mean, which ones get?
Well, what we, again, we refer back to the pavement study that we did back in 2015, which recommended a lot of PCIs and the prescriptions. At the end of the day, we go out and look at them and make some decisions in the field on the best, to validate that recommendation based on the pavement survey. That's really how we go about doing it.
So it was ascertained that Lady Lane needed an overlay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Thomas.
I've had many calls about the Forest Hills section, and they are very pleased. They would joke about driving down those roads like in a Jeep during the war, dodging the landmines. And thank you. It's a very good job, and the workers are very professional. They get their job done, and they're out of the way as soon as they say they're going to be out of the way. So I haven't had any problems with them.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cooks.
Tell me more about I know we did this on the buy board, and for the sake of those who are listening in the audience, for the sake of those who are listening outside of the audience by internet, define buy board one more time for the audience, and then also tell me what do we know about the Viking, the company, the Viking Construction? Are they local? Am I reading it from Grand Prairie? What do we know about the buy board?
So, well, the buy board is actually a little bit different contracting vehicle. This particular one was actually a piggyback contract. So in this particular case, the city of Grand Prairie went out and solicited multiple bids on for their city, which yielded a particular unit price that we get for our roads. So the unit price for the microsurfacing job was competed by the city of Grand Prairie for their price, and that they deemed was the most competitive, lowest bid. And then what we did for the city of Duncanville is we just took advantage of their pricing. Now, as far as Viking goes as a company, I believe they're local to the Metroplex. They do work all over the Metroplex. They did the job, the previous job. If I'm not mistaken, I think we used them last year as well because, again, they were the Grand Prairie contract.
Okay, so, and I'll bring this up now for future consideration. I'll probably always be asking about the vendors that we're doing business with and want to know more about them, so we wouldn't catch you guys off guard, Mr. City Manager, that I'll be asking about those companies and if they're local, where they're located. So when we get to those points, expect those questions from me if you don't already provide it.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Seeing as there's no further discussion, we have a motion to approve and second. Please vote. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5C. Consider a resolution authorizing award of IFB number 18-095 for accessibility improvements to Camcrete Contracting Incorporated through the city's competitive bid process with an estimated expenditure amount not to exceed $399,801. Mr. Ramey.
Yes, again, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is for the FY18 accessibility improvements, manifesting itself as ADA sidewalk program. Again, the applicable guidance is seen above. Council capstone number 2, high quality neighborhoods. And you see through the goals, and again, this ties to my work plan item for providing additional American with Disability Act rated sidewalks. Again, the staff request is for you to approve the Camcrete Concrete tonight for the amount of shown of $399,000. Just a little bit of background. Again, the accessibility program is the idea of it is to ensure that anybody, regardless of their physical ability or within their limitations, can get around the town, get around the city. And the way it manifests itself again for us is sidewalks, ramps. We've already gone through previously and put up new pedestrian heads at the traffic signals, again, to make those available for all Americans as well. And again, where we go is we try to target the locations every year based on areas that where we've received citizens have complained or have called in and said, hey, I'm visually impaired, or I'm I've had problems in this particular area, and so that those areas are where we try to focus our efforts. Again, just looking at previous years, you'll see the dollar values that we've awarded every year, trying to again make improvements to our city and make it accessible to everybody. Again, the scope of this particular project that we're bringing to you tonight is approximately 6,250 linear feet of sidewalks and 47 ramps. Again, the lowest responsible bidder was Camcrete for 586. That was for the 7 locations, but we reduced it, as shown, basically just to get it down to meet our budget. I just wanted to point out, because this is a discussion that we had a few meetings ago when we talked about the CDBG block grant. Council.
Excuse me, define CDBG, please.
The CDBG is Community Development Block Grant, which is a program from the Housing and Urban Development from the federal government, administered through the county. And the purpose of that is they give us money every 2 years for us to make improvements in areas of the city that are designated low to moderate income areas based on the census areas, and then they get focused attention, or we get extra dollars that we can use to improve those areas.
Okay. Thank you.
Earlier this year, Council approved some sidewalks up into Fair Meadows subdivision. The way it works, though, is we do the work and then we get reimbursed. So the way we briefed Council previously was originally we had $600,000 in FY18 for sidewalks. but we revised it based on the council's guidance. So we reduced our sidewalk program this year to no more than $416,000, so that we would have the funds available in 19 when we got the CDBG. The next 2 years of funding arrived, and so we will apply the other $184,000 worth of sidewalk funds to the Fair Meadows sidewalk project. And then sometime in 19, we'll receive our credit back, or a reimbursement from CDBG, which will then inform our FY20 sidewalk budget. So I just sort of wanted to show you how that math worked out. Again, refer to the maps that I presented, but these are the locations that we identified this year. A big emphasis, you'll notice, is on Daniel-Dale, with a little bit on Greenstone, and then in one neighborhood where we had some folks call in that were experiencing accessibility problems.
Can I ask you a question on the Daniel-Dale? So there's no sidewalk there currently?
That's correct.
So how wide is that sidewalk going to be?
Typical sidewalk, what we're talking about is 4-foot sidewalks, ma'am.
Any chance it can be wider so that you can be bike accessible? Like, what's the bike width? Is it?
Well, usually we try not to put bikes on those same roads with, especially, folks that are doing like exercising for bikes versus just the kids going between neighborhoods.
But Daniel-Dale's a busy road, and kids can't bike down the street.
Well, you're correct, but again, the bikes that we're talking about, which is just a kid on a BMX bike, I don't think it's a problem. The bottom line is the scope that we had proposed was 4-foot sidewalks, which is I guess more standard just for pedestrian. If the desire is to make wider sidewalks as applicable based on constraints, then we would have to do a change order to the contract.
I think, Councilmember, I think to answer your question too, I guess if I understand what you're asking, typically multi-purpose trails, multi-use trails is what we were talking about earlier in the trail package. That's going to probably be 10 to 12 foot width sidewalks. In this case, though, we're just looking at standard width sidewalks.
So will we be redoing these, or will this not be part of the trail system?
I can't really talk to the overarching trail system, ma'am. I'd have to refer to the Parks Director on that.
I think on as far as the overall plan, on the comprehensive plan, you recall that a number of the arterials were called out for different types of streetscape treatments, but no decisions have been made. But one of those options were multi-use trails along some of our major arterials, but nothing has been designated in the comprehensive plan. I think in the Parks Master Plan, it's still very broad, but I think initially what we were looking at is more trails that will connect parks using existing waterways, features like that, or the right-of-ways that will, again, connect parks or property that we have. So I think the arterials will be something farther in the future.
Move to approve.
I still have a question. Could you go back to CSBG grant and remind me that I'm familiar with the CSBG grant from another level, from serving on the board for Urban League and serving on the board for Community Council.
If I could interrupt, we have a motion to approve. Let's carry on with that process, and then
okay,
have your questions. So we do have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now, Councilmember Cooks.
Okay. So back to that CSBG grant. So we're giving a grant from the CSBG, Community Service Block Grant, right?
Correct.
And how much were we giving this every 2 years, every year, you said?
No, well, I'm trying to think back from my roughly around 2015 timeframe. They changed the CDBG program in terms of how they did our allocations from the county to get to funding every 2 years. That way we had more money. At one time we could do something a little bit grander Our allocation that we're projected for 2019, if I'm not mistaken, is around maybe $250,000. Roughly, that's off the top of my head. And when we went to the council several months ago for the CDBG program and for their approval on how to spend the money, the decision, which is something that we have been doing on a recurring basis, is we use roughly half the funds to pay for one code enforcement officer to basically do their patrols in the CDBG areas out of our 4 code officers. And then the other half we apply to some project. And then this year, the project, we nominated 2 projects, and the project that was selected by council was the sidewalk project up at Fair Meadows.
So are you saying the county, or you mean the state when you're talking about the grant?
For us, the money comes to us through the county.
Through the county. Okay. All right, thank you. But I'm sorry, and the council will make the selection on where the funds are spent that comes from that grant?
The council did make the choice for 19 and 20 was made several months ago.
Okay.
And then that was this sidewalk program, and then to continue to fund one code officer out of the CDBG grant funds.
All right, thank you.
Seeing as there's no further discussion, we have a motion to approve, and it's been seconded, so please vote. Thank you. One item of housekeeping, I inadvertently did not mention to the citizens present that we are moving the executive session on the agenda that was at the beginning of council. We're moving that to the end. So we're going ahead and proceed through our agenda to the staff and board reports, and after those are finished, the city council will recess into executive session for your information. So item number 6, staff and board reports. Received the police department quarterly report. Chief Brown.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you what has taken place in the police department this past quarter. I'd like to begin my presentation with an update on our staffing in the police department. If you look at the left side of the slide, Stephanie Straw and Trevin Green just recently completed our field training program. Stephanie has been assigned to day watch patrol, and Trevin has been assigned to night patrol, and we're really proud of those 2 officers. They performed very well in our field training program, and is really representing the police department very well. The right side of the slide are 2 officers that just graduated from the police academy on July 27th. Stephanie Norman and Ashton McMiller will be assigned to the field training program. That program is approximately 17 weeks. And once they complete their field training, they will also be assigned to the patrol division. The 3 gentlemen at the top of this slide, Devin, Kristen, and Christopher, are currently in the police academy. They are scheduled to graduate in approximately 6 weeks on September the 27th. And after graduation, they too will return to the police department and be assigned to our field training program. The young lady at the bottom of the slide, Tiffany, we hired her from the city of Dallas. She will enter the police academy this month on August the 27th. We currently have 6 police officer vacancies. If you'll recall,
Chief, if I could interrupt for a second.
Yes, sir.
Just an observation question. During the July 4th event that we had, I know there was a uniformed police officer with an individual in khakis. And I believe he said that was someone that was in training. So when they go into this training after coming out of the COG facility and they go into the additional street training, do they not wear a regular uniform?
Yes, sir, they do. I'm not sure at what phase you're referring to, but the Duncanville Police Department has a very unique training program. For example, when we hire someone to enter the police academy, we actually bring them in early. We bring them in approximately 2 weeks early, and we get them started with training on very important policies like pursuit policies, use of force, things of that nature, and then they enter the academy. So I'm not sure at which point this individual was in khakis. In addition to immediately after graduating from the academy, we hold them 2 weeks prior to putting them in the car with a police officer, and at that point they are in uniform.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
As a reminder, we had a entrance exam that was held on June the 23rd. We had 59 applicants take that exam. Of those 59, 26 passed, and those 26 actually created our current eligibility list. And so we are working individuals from that list. I had an opportunity to interview a young man this morning. The interview went very well, so he is proceeding forward with our hiring process. There are still several individuals on that list, including 3 from the National Guard. We have a sergeant who the past year has been on military leave, and he recruited members of his unit. And so 3 of those individuals took our exam, they passed it, and now they are actually filtering back in from their military assignment, and they will be going through our process as well. So we're really appreciative of this sergeant who did a lot to get those gentlemen to take our exam. This photograph is a photograph of Lieutenant Ron Wilcox. It's very important to me, Mayor and Council, that we continue to develop the men and women of our police department. He is a lieutenant in our police department, and he completed a 8-week executive program that's held at the Institute for Law Enforcement Administration, which is held in Plano, Texas. And part of that 8-week training covers things such as budget and financial management, building and leading effective teams, executive writing skills, crisis media management, servant leadership, legal issues that are affecting law enforcement today. And so all of our lieutenants, it's a requirement of mine that all of our lieutenants complete this school. And so the majority of them have. We've got 1 left that will attend this school as well.
That's you on the right, is that correct?
No, that is not me.
It's not you?
No, sir. That's the director of that program.
Okay.
I'm a little taller than he is.
I was saying, if that's you, this gentleman is extremely tall. But
No,
it's
sir,
not you.
No, sir, that's not me.
He's about as tall as the chief.
That's right.
Okay.
He is about my height.
About your size?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Curious, okay.
Also, this is information that has been presented to the council as well. The City of Duncanville Police Department contracted with the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And what we wanted to do, Mayor and Council, is we wanted an independent assessment of the Duncanville Police Department's hiring process. And so we contracted with them. They were on site on May the 14th of this year. And they, in my judgment, conducted a very extensive evaluation of our police department. They spoke with a number of our officers. They looked at our policies. They evaluated our hiring process from beginning to end. And they will have a very extensive report outlining recommendations for the police department. We should get that report this fall. We hope that we get it late October, early November. These are photographs of the recent security fence around the police department. And Mayor and Council, I would like to say on behalf of the men and women of the Duncanville Police Department, we would like to thank everyone who participated in us getting this fence erected around the police department. As you recall, there have been a number of attacks on police agencies across the nation. Police vehicles have been destroyed, police officers have been shot at, vehicles have been burglarized, And so this adds a measure of security for our officers. And I tell you, this is a project that I consistently hear from the men and the women of the police department where they want me to express my gratitude to this council. So thank you very much. Each year we have our police memorial in May. We had 2 officers killed in the line of duty, and we will never forget the dedicated service from those 2 gentlemen. On May the 10th, this is the graduation of our 56 Citizens Police Academy. These individuals were able to learn the inner workings of our police department. We also have now begun to advertise the 57th Police Academy, Citizens Police Academy, and it actually starts on August the 28th in about 3 weeks. This is a photograph of the 9th annual Duncanville Fire Truck Pull benefiting Special Olympics. And Mayor and Council, I'd like for you to really focus your attention to that 3rd bullet point. It says the Duncanville Fire Truck Pull is the largest fire truck pull in Texas for the last 4 years, benefiting Special Olympics. And I know a number of you were present at this event. And I had an opportunity to talk to the gentleman that is over Special Olympic Texas at this event. And he thanked me because our city, and this is something to be really proud of, our city, our volunteers from the police department and the fire department and the parks department and everyone from the various departments in our city, we volunteer our time and we raise the most money of any city in the state of Texas. That's something to really be proud of. And this is a photograph of our Juneteenth celebration. Things went very well. There was no issues to report. And just a few commendations that I wanted to share with you. And Mayor and Council, I listed a number of other slides noting commendations for our employees, but these are just 4 that I want to share with you. On April the 4th, I received information from a citizen who had expressed gratitude for his positive experience with Officer Brian Lara for investigating a criminal mischief call. And criminal mischief, for those of you who are not familiar with what that offense would be, it would be like someone damaging some property. Maybe someone threw an egg on the car and causing monetary loss that has to be repaired. On April the 29th, Officer Keith Kraft was commended for being nice, helpful, and professional in the assistance with a citizen who was having a medical emergency at a local store. And on May the 23rd, Officer Kamisha Johnson was commended for her professionalism and empathy assistance to citizens while investigating a motor vehicle accident. And then last but not least, on June the 1st, again, Officer Keith Kraft, Lewis Chapman, and Trevin Green was commended for their professionalism, courtesy, and compassion while dealing with a habitual runaway. Each month, I prepare a report for Mr. Hugman, and what we want to do as a police department is we want the city manager and we want the public to be aware of some very critical tasks that we perform that could cause our city to be sued. So we want to monitor these things as often as we can. So when we begin to look at social media, we've all seen use of force incidents that brought negative publicity to cities. And so we want to ensure that we're monitoring these things at all times. And so when we have any type of use of force, that use of force is vetted up the chain of command of the police department, and we ensure that it's in compliance with the law. And so during this period, we had 5 use of force incidents, and all was found to be lawful and within policy. And we also had 2 pursuits. Those pursuits were found to be within departmental guidelines as well. And then last but not least, we always take a very close look at our citizens' complaints. Every complaint that comes into the police department is investigated, and then we respond back to the person that makes the complaint with our findings. In April, there was an internal complaint for a racial slur, and that complaint was unfounded. And then also we had another complaint of an internal complaint for dereliction of duty. That complaint was sustained and disciplinary action was taken. This slide just talks about our community policing philosophy. Primarily, Officer Doug Siss coordinates this part of our police department. In April, there were 14 meetings, and of those 14 meetings, there were over 1,300 individuals that attended those meetings. In May of 2018, there were 7 meetings, and there were 317 participants at that meeting. And so the rest of this slide just talks about Officer Sisk and various members of the police department. There were 18 businesses regarding security tips, deployment of observation towers, and coordination of other events. And then the last 2 slides I have for you is slides that show our crime for the past quarter. And it's really important that we understand when we are comparing our crime with other cities, these are the 8 Part 1 crimes that we use to compare our crime rate. So for example, if we're comparing crime to Cedar Hill or Dallas or the Solar or Red Oak or Glen Heights, we are talking about the same 8 crimes. So if you look at the middle of this slide where it says last LTD, that's year to date. So from January to June of 2017, we had 619 Part 1 crimes. That's the very bottom number in the middle of the column. And so what we're doing is we're comparing our Part 1 crimes from that time period to January to June of 2018. And so you will see that our crime rate has increased for that same period. But when we get this information, we want to pull the layers back a little more and determine, well, why is our crime increasing? And so if you look at the very last column, you'll see for the most part, the majority of our crimes decreased, with the exception of really 2. If you look at the middle of the column, it says burglary, residential. We had 6 more burglaries for that same period, which increased the crime rate 200%. So from January to June, we had 6 more burglaries than we did the previous time frame. And if you go down to where it says total theft, that offense increased 61%. So we had 100, and looked like that's what, 111? We had 111 more thefts during this time frame than we did the previous period. And so as I indicated, what we try to do is determine, well, why is that happening? And so I want to share with you just some numbers and why that particular number increased. First of all, it's not uncommon for crime to begin to increase during the summer months. More people are out, more burglars are active during the summer. And then secondly, I noticed that we had a number of lawn equipment that was stolen. Unfortunately, people are working in the yard, they leave lawn equipment out, they leave their garage doors open, and that offense has occurred a little more during this time period. And thirdly, I noticed that we're having more shoplifting calls. And one of our major grocery stores is catching, actually, shoplifters in their store. We've had a number of shoplifters arrested from one of our department stores in our city. And we also had some shoplifting occurring at one of our convenience stores. Those have increased quite a bit. We've had some motor vehicle parts and accessories taken from several vehicles. I noticed that a few tailgates have been stolen off the back of some pickups, and a catalytic converter was also stolen from a motor vehicle. And those of you who are not familiar with a catalytic converter, it's part of the emission system. And individuals are able to take that off on the bottom underneath your vehicle and pawn it and sell it. It's a very expensive piece of equipment. And so what we are doing now, we're being very proactive, and also CISC and the other members of our police department, we're actually going out to businesses. We're putting information out via social media. We're doing everything to alert our citizens about how to help us help them in regards to these offenses. For many years, we've had a program where Officer CISC comes in on weekend, and we're able to put a device on our tailgates of vehicles. It won't reduce those vehicles, it won't eliminate those tailgates from being taken off, but it makes it more difficult. And if a thief knows that it's going to take a little longer and they're going to be seen, it reduces the likelihood of that tailgate being removed. So those are some of the reasons that the thefts have increased.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
How are we doing with catching the perpetrators of the burglaries and the thefts?
We're doing very well, Mayor and Council, and I'm really pleased with the follow-up investigations from our Criminal Investigative Division. We've made a number of arrests for serious offenses as well as minor offenses over the past several weeks and days. Within 24 hours, as you know, we've had the individual identified that committed the homicide on Kent Wisdom Road. And we were able to solve a robbery at one of our stores on Clark Road, and that individual was responsible for committing robberies across the state of Texas. And our detectives were able to, without going into a lot of our investigative secrets, yes, sir, we were able to identify a vehicle in the area, and that vehicle matched the description of the vehicle that was used in another city. And so the detectives were able to tie those loose ends together, and we cleared up not only offenses in our city, but offenses in other cities.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Chief, thank you for all that you do and all of the, in our police department. I really appreciate it. I really like the slide where you was very innovative to have someone to come in and look out for the hiring practices. I thought that was very innovative, so thank you for that. When you talk about crime, you talk about crime over Duncanville, and I know it's divided up into different segments. What is it called? DU?
Different. We have 4 different beats, yes, sir.
Different beats. Is there one beat that's heavier crime than the other? And if so, what do you do to, I know all of the city is important, but if there's one over the other, what other efforts do you do to help reduce in an area that's higher than the other?
That's a good question, Mr. Cooks. I would say that, generally speaking, the areas where you have the most traffic is going to be the areas that you're going to get the most calls. But Duncanville is such that, with the exception of the southwest part of our city, that's probably the part of our city that gets the least amount of calls for service. But the other remaining beats get quite I'd say they're probably divided equally. So there's with the exception of the southeast section, and that's the sections right by Daniel Dale and Clark area. The other 3 are approximately the same. And so what we do is as a command team, we go over those statistics, not only in our command staff meeting, but our crime analyst sends information out, and we look at that information, dissect it, and determine where we need to best utilize our resources.
I think I was reading that in a comprehensive report where it showed one area higher than the other, so that's why I asked that particular question. So, all right, thank you.
Hey, Chief. Thank you for detailing the property, the crime against property, but you kind of glossed over it. The the crime against persons is down, and that's the important thing. And we appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, seems there are no further questions. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to our next item is the Fire Department's quarterly report. Chief Rohde.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, City Manager. Tonight, I would like to start with our staffing. As you recall, At our last quarterly report, we said we had no vacancies in the fire department. At this time, we have one vacancy, and before that, we had tried to fill that vacancy with the civil service test that we had, but we expired that test, so we gave another civil service test on July the 7th. We had 92 individuals sign up for that test, and 38 arrived on test and tested, and then 24 of those passed the civil service entrance exam. Then we have put them through a physical agility test, and through that physical agility test, when they pass that, we give them a personal history statement, and they take that home, and they'll bring that back to us, and we review it. We have 5 interviews set up for August the 13th, so hopefully we can get that one position filled after that date. Paramedic school, we had 4 of our firefighters go to paramedic school in the following year, and they've all graduated here in May 2018, so we're able to utilize them on our ambulances now. But one thing I was awful proud of, the department's proud of, and the city should be proud of, is that one of our paramedics in that school from class 141, John Cook, was the valedictorian of that class. It goes to attest to the type of quality of people that we hire in the fire department, that they can score out of that El Centro College and be valedictorian of that class. Currently, we have 2 of our firefighters, and they are attending paramedic school at El Centro. As y'all recall, we had one of our retirements. We lost a lot of experience, a lot of leadership when David Leith retired from the fire department. He had 35 years and 9 months. And one thing I've noted about David is he was one of our leaders when we went down to the deployment down in Harvey deployment, and he was very successful in making our deployment down there a success. With David Lee's retirement, he was a captain, so we needed to promote 2 individuals up to leadership positions in the fire department. Driver engineer James Leary studied for the civil service promotional exam, and he scored at the top, so we promoted him to captain. And then Dan Kendall, he was a firefighter paramedic. He took the civil service promotional exam, and he is now our newest engineer. Our smoke alarm installation, y'all probably have heard me brag about our smoke alarm installation, how successful it is in the community. We've hit all 5 districts this year. And just to give you some stats from the fiscal year 17-18, we have knocked on 495 doors, made contact with 328 of our residents, installed a total of 662 smoke alarms. We've replaced batteries or installed smoke alarms in 263 residents, and we had a total of 65 refusals. And then over the past 2 years that we've been installing our smoke alarms, we've knocked on 998 doors, made contact with 527 of our residents, installed a total of 1,025 smoke alarms. We checked and replaced batteries or installed those smoke alarms in 412 residences, and we had a total of 115 refusals. So you can see it's been a fairly successful program for the fire department in providing safety awareness for the community. The American Heart Association certifications for CPR. Our EMS division chief, Mike Ryan, we utilize him in the city to help teach CPR amongst our staff. He taught 52 of our summer camp employees at the field house. We also did 3 at the senior citizen center, and then we had 2 at the recreation center. If you were to take, if you were to take all those classes that he taught all the individuals, it would have cost the city over $2,000. So Mike's very good at saving the city money for these CPR classes and first aid classes that he provides to our city staff.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
do we have the defibrillator units at all these locations?
We have AEDs, yes sir, we do. In the senior center, we have 2 down at the field house, 1 down at the service center. Of course, we have 1 at the fire station, then we have 1 here at City Hall.
So does the CPR training include use of that
Yes, sir.
AED? Okay,
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Some of our accomplishments, we had a big part
in the 4th of July celebration. We put in our new Quint 272, which we're very, very proud of, a very nice looking fire equipment. Our Medic 272 participated in the parade. We also had a unified incident command with our police department, but that also included our public works and our parks and rec. We were in there with our unified command, so we're all on the same page of making decisions when it related to the 4th of July celebration. We also provided an EMS cart in one of our reserve MICUs in the park, so that way if we had any kind of incidents, we could get instantaneous response to whatever type of patient we had in the park because of our presence inside the park near the fence. We also provided a brush truck. Reason for that brush truck is when these fireworks go off, there's debris that comes off the fireworks, and that's to protect any kind of grass fires or any structure fires that could possibly start from that debris. Our fire marshal was instrumental in setting the fireworks off and make sure that they were conducted safely, and he's the one who worked with the vendor to make sure that everything went very good. Our fire inspector was also on scene, went in and inspected all of our vendors so that we didn't have any problems with the vendors before we started setting up our program. And then we also was instrumental, one of my favorites is our CERT team. CERT team was out in the park and they presented with cooling stations because, as y'all recall, it was fairly warm out there. They had a lot of lost children that they monitored till we found the parents. And then they also provided minor first aid. Pardon? We sat there and babysitted them because I was really amazed at how well those children were taken care of until the parents showed up. Some had been show up for 30 or 45 minutes. So they had a good part in taking care of those kids. Something that's big in the fire department is our succession training and our development. We will continue to develop our new candidates that are in these promotional positions that they got into. We send 4 to an emergency vehicle driving course to be able to learn how to operate these big apparatus in traffic conditions and bad weather conditions. We also sent 4 to NFPA 1851 course. Shortly, what that is, that's about the care and maintenance of our bunker gear, which y'all are very well aware of the expense of that gear, so we really want to take good care of that gear, make it last as long as we can. We also had a couple of our officers attend Fire Officer 1 course, and then we also have 6 of our pumper operators attend Pump Simulator course. Our Emergency Management Operations Coordinator, just to sum up some of the exercises that she's conducted for Lancaster, DeSoto, Cedar Hill, and Duncanville. She conducted a tornado incident functional exercise for DeSoto and Lancaster, conducted Lancaster's Independent School District tornado exercise, mass care and sheltering full-scale exercise with the American Red Cross for the cities of Cedar Hill and Duncanville. She's currently working with Lauren Wood Rehab and held a weather tabletop exercise on August the 6th, and will hold a full-scale evacuation exercise on August the 20th. She also held a mass care and sheltering full-scale exercise with the American Red Cross for the cities of DeSoto and Lancaster on August the 3rd. So she's very well involved with the 4 cities on planning, emergency planning for all 4 of these cities.
Question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
On evacuation of the nursing home?
Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking of some of the individuals that are residents there that are non-ambulatory. I mean, this has to be done, I know, so that just in case we don't lose anyone, but it's that realistic, even those non-ambulatory and the ones in severe cases, everything goes.
Yeah, Tanya, when she goes in there, we try to make it as realistic as possible. Again, like you say, some of those patients, you have to take real care that we don't interfere with their care. So she's very careful with that. We work very closely with the facility and try to mock that exercise as best we can to make it seem realistic.
With some consideration for those that are
yes, sir.
Really in severe shape. Okay.
Yes, sir. We received a state Homeland Security grant program for our CERT team. They received 4 iPads through the state Homeland Security grant program by the Best Southwest CERT team for damage assessment. If we ever have any type of tornado, whatever destroys some kind of our infrastructure. We also had ICMA international fellows that came and visited, saw how we did business in the city of Duncanville and how we did emergency management. And then we had event planning after the 4th of July, so all of our departments got together and we all analyzed how we could do things better for the 4th of July event and improve for next year. Our total calls for the 3rd quarter, we had 1,536. To be noted there is our EMS calls. Again, they're our major source of calls, 1,150. And that's the end of my report tonight. Do you have any questions? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, good job, Chief.
Thank you, Dennis.
I had an emergency room nurse that I know approached me. He works out in one of our local gymnasiums, and he asked if we had any requirements for them to have AEDs in these gymnasiums, and I told him, as far as I knew, we didn't. And he has talked with the owner of this gym, and they don't seem to know much about it. And I'm just curious, is there any talk in your department about maybe interfacing with these gymnasiums and encouraging them to put some AEDs in?
Our EMS division chief, he works closely with some of the school districts. I'm not sure about some of the independent gyms. I'm not sure if we have any. But he's made sure that all of our city facilities are equipped with them. And then we also work with the school district, and the school district has a lot of the AEDs. Now, I'm not sure about the locations in any of these gymnasiums, but that would definitely be a good location to put them.
Yeah, just something to think about.
Right, and if they want, they can call up EMS Division Chief Brian, and I'm sure he'll work with them closely to get them going down the right path for getting one. They are expensive.
Yes.
Seeing there's no further questions, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you all that you do. And moving on to item number C, the monthly financial report. Mr. Summerlin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This will be our June financial report. And as at the end of June, our benchmark, we expect revenues and expenditures to be about 75% of the budget. We look at our general fund summary, and we ended June with a unreserved fund balance of 11.8 million, 143 days of operations, and that's about 5.6 million in excess of our 75-day fund reserve. As I always like to remind people, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next section, is that we do receive the majority of our revenues at the beginning of the year, and then we spend down on that. So it's not unusual to be above the benchmark heading into the end of the year. So our property tax revenue consists of 3 different revenue parts. We have our current property tax collections, and they are at 99% of the budget. Again, most of those come in during the November, December, January timeframe. Then our delinquent tax collections, that's from prior year tax rolls. There it's at 89% of the budget. And then our penalties and interest on past due taxes are 187% of budget. So overall, the property tax revenue is at 99.7% of the budget. So we're almost at that 100% collection overall. Sales tax revenue is about 6% higher than it was the same time last year. And this is after 7 months of revenue. Keep in mind that our sales tax is 2 months in arrears. Overall, general fund expenditures are at 69% of the budget, which means that we're under that 75% benchmark, which is a good thing. Again, this is the same type of chart that I show each month, and the purple line is our budget on a just if everything was incurred uniformly throughout the year. And the blue line is a three-year average of our revenues, and then the red line is our actuals. And you can see how it mirrors that three-year line, and we're headed up toward where we budgeted for the end of the year in terms of revenues. If we look at property taxes, lasered out from those, again, it's the same thing. You see, because of our increased property values, that we're ahead of that three-year curve. We should come out over here about where we budgeted. As I noted before, the expenditures, they started off a little bit high at the beginning of the year, and then we came down right along that purple line, which is the straight line budget. And now we've got this nice little margin here between our total budgeted expenditures for the year and where we actually are. And so we hope to come in at or below that budget for revenues. Look at the utility fund. That ending unreserved fund balance is $6.9 million. That's 136 days of operations, and about $3.9 million in excess of the 60-day fund reserve. Our utility solid waste revenues are 1 month in arrears, so there's only 8 months of revenue that are reflected. And overall, our utility fund expenditures are about 70% of the budget. Again, a nice little margin below that benchmark of 75%. Same concept here. You see the revenues in the red, and as typical with utility fund revenues, we typically start off the year below where we've budgeted, and then as we get through the warmer months, we tend to creep a little bit closer toward that line. It looks like at this point we'll probably end up getting pretty close to where our budgeted revenues are. We may be a little bit low. And then to help in that projection of revenues, again, our expenditures running at about 70%, so we're got a nice little margin below our total budgeted line. These are the Innovation Fund. We're now calling this the Excess Reserves Project Fund, formerly known as the Innovation Fund. That's the new nomenclature that we're going for, and in future months we'll go ahead and update this. We had already done the financial report before we decided on what we were going to call it, but it's going to be called the Excess Reserves Project Fund. And so these things that are in yellow are essentially complete, and then the other projects are yet to be completed. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
I won't have any questions for you, Richard, but for those that we know that this is a very important part of what we do as representing our constituents. And the reason I don't have questions is because you went through it so thoroughly, but I know in the future that we'll ask questions just in case there's questions out there from anyone that's listening online or in the audience. So we'll encourage the audience and our citizens, if there's questions that you see, email either any one of us that we can ask and answer that question for you as well. But we know that this is one of those most important parts of our what we do every day for our citizens. So thank you for your financial report.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Seeing there's no further comments, at this point in time, we will recess our city council meeting at 8:43, and city council will go into executive session in the briefing room. Thank you. We stand adjourned at 10:06.